Hey everyone, welcome back to I Don't Know What That Means.
It's our podcast. I'm Jen.
And I'm Graham.
We introduced ourselves
We did.
successfully without me being a bitch about it at all.
Don't talk about my partner like that.
I'm impressed.
Um, we've been having some audio quality problems the last couple of episodes. I know that if you have listened to the communication and special interests episodes, I can be very hard to hear. I kind of sound like I'm speaking from the end of a tunnel or something. So hopefully we have that sorted out for this episode.
Well, as I say, hope is not a strategy. So we did spend some time troubleshooting and working on it.
Indeed.
Yeah. I think we got it, dude.
We're hopeful.
Anyway, tell the people what we're talking about today, Graham.
We're going to talk about Halloween.
Hell yeah, brother.
I have a less structured approach to this one than I have to the other ones. It looks like I have a lot of notes. I really don't.
What do you mean you don't have a lot of notes?
Yeah, well,
Who are you even?
this one is different because it's not like we're speaking specifically about like the context of our relationship and my neurodivergence and the effects thereof and everything. This is just like, here's a thing that we like that we're going to talk about. So I don't know that I can do a ton of like tying it in with neurodivergent traits or anything.
You don't have like 900 definitions of words to tell people.
I do not this time.
Fuck yeah. It's loosey goosey.
Yeah, it's going to be weird, as befits the spookiest holiday of the year.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, kids.
It's the ghost wonderful time of the year.
Oh, fuck. I'm so mad you said that, not me. Good job. Good job, babe. I'm really impressed.
It killed on Twitter.
Fuck you.
Like 7 years ago or whatever. No, it's funny that actually came up not in the context of Halloween originally. There's that Andy Williams song, the Andy Williams rendition of The Most Wonderful Time of the Year, which is very much a Christmas song. But there
is it?
It is. And there's a bit in it where the lyric is like, there'll be scary ghost stories. And it was very much like a Victorian and kind of an early American thing to actually tell ghost stories around Christmas time. The darker half of the year was a time that was a lot closer to death for a lot of people for like most of history. Anyway, that's where that came from, the ghost wonderful time of the year.
I'm really upset that you took this cool joke about Halloween and made it about Christmas.
Arguably, I took a song about Christmas and made it about Halloween.
Whatever. Anyway, I was excited to talk about Halloween, just end of sentence, but I posted a couple questions and polls like with the podcast and on the media hellscapes. I was kind of surprised because this may shock people, I don't like putting a lot of effort into the media posts. And so they're pretty simple, like yes or no, like kind of do you like Halloween? Literally everyone I can remember, everybody was like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, I mean, yes was the answer. Sorry, I have to paraphrase with some flavor, but yeah, everybody was super into it. All my friends that I asked, like even directly, they said yes. I got a little bit more colorful responses, just like directly speaking to people about things, because they had more options than just one button push. I thought that was really cool, and I have questions. I think just I'm a curious person, and I know why I like Halloween, but I feel like a lot of that has to do with me just being an extroverted weirdo, and I am curious where like the crossover on the Venn diagram is for my neurodivergent friends. And so you don't have to frame it that way, I guess. Like I just could you tell me and the people what you liked about Halloween as a kid? Some things are going to be so universal. It feels like a dumb question. And I'm just curious if there's anything that I would be surprised by.
So this one I think is an interesting topic between you and I, because I feel like you and I maybe come at Halloween from different directions.
Mm-hmm.
For me, as long as I've been aware of the term Samhain, I have always kind of made a distinction between Halloween and Samhain, that like they're two related but not identical things that just happen to happen on the same day. Halloween, I think, feels a lot more like a social event. There's much more of an aspect of like the trick-or-treating and the parties and that sort of thing. And then the sort of the Samhain half of things feels to me like darker and a little bit more solitary, and like they're both marking death and marking dying. And I feel like Halloween maybe does so in a slightly more, not a fun way, but kind of like a tongue-in-cheeky sort of a jocular way.
It's fun, dude.
Sure. Whereas I feel like the sort of Samhain side of House is a lot more like, I don't want to say respectful necessarily, but like it doesn't have that same sort of flippancy, I guess, that Halloween sort of does. So for me, to answer the question, I think that I got into Halloween initially just because I have always been obsessed with death. That's always been a thing since I was a very little kid, and I don't really know why. My grandfather died of pneumonia when I was 6, I want to say, but I think it was present like well before that. I think it had just kind of always been there, and it wasn't like I had lost a ton of people or whatever. Like I was just surrounded by death all the time. Like it was just a really interesting thing to me, and the symbolism around Halloween always got me. The ghosts and the skulls and the skeletons and everything, gravestones, and yeah, I don't know, it's almost special interesty, right? Like it's something that for some reason just scratches some itch somewhere in my brain that I don't know that I can point to really. I love the color scheme for whatever reason. Black and orange always just really worked for me as a color combination. To this day, my wardrobe is largely black, and the parts that aren't black are mostly orange. To sort of tie it into like neurodivergence things, there's a quietness about this time of year. The Samhain approach to the holiday really celebrated, and we're marking the passage from like not necessarily life into death. Like it's all about dying more even than about death, I think. And in that sort of like mystical kind of fashion, just this quiet contemplation, this quiet marking of this transition from one thing into another. Actually, as I think about it, I've always been really into liminal spaces. I spend a ton of time at the beach or the edge of the woods or whatever it might be, like places that are kind of halfway between. And Halloween is very much that. It's very much that space between life and death, that space between this world and the next, that space between even just seasons, between summer and winter. So I think there's a bunch of stuff that leads to me being a big weird Halloweeny.
Real talk, that is not as metal of an answer as I was expecting. That was like so woo woo and like
It's fair. I mean, there is a lot about there is I just like skulls. I just like the way jack o' lanterns look. But there's this like, I don't know. There's a way that the air feels sometimes, and I haven't gotten this in a long time because climate change has destroyed the planet. But there's this way that like in the fall when like it's just dark, like it's just past dusk, the sun has set and it's like not completely dark, but it's just about, and there's like a chill in the wind, and maybe there's like a smell of smoke very far off or something that like you can kind of smell like the decaying leaves underfoot and everything, and like that sort of like sense very much encapsulates kind of how I feel about it a lot, is just that awareness of things dying around us and kind of marking it and celebrating it, not necessarily like woohoo, we're all dying, this is great, but this is a necessary and an unavoidable part of the cycle of existence. I think that really does inform a lot of my love of the season and of the holiday in particular. But yeah, I mean, fucking, I don't know. I like death. I like dead stuff. I mean, it's a holiday about ghosts and skeletons, and I'm fucking obsessed with that. So, what about you?
what about me?
How did you come to it? Like, what did it mean to you as a kid, and how does that inform where you are now?
It's always just been my favorite holiday because I think it was the only time you just get to do what you want. Like every holiday has some other bullshit associated with it when you're a kid. Like it's the only one I remember. You don't have to go kiss your gross old relatives for some reason. You don't have to eat disgusting food for some reason because it's tradition. Like you get to dress up however you want. You get to go trick or treating and have candy and watch weird shows. And at school, there's going to be parties instead of regular school day. Like I cannot think of one single bad thing about Halloween.
I was thinking about that when we were kind of setting up for this. That hadn't really occurred to me when I was making my notes or anything, but like a lot of the other big holidays are very like family coded, or they're you mentioned gross food. I was never going to be a fan of Thanksgiving for a lot of reasons, but it's a very like family focused holiday, and it's, you know, highly centered around food and everything. And then like obviously Christmas, there's, even if you're secular, and you're not really into it from like a Jesus-y perspective, whatever, there's still a very social aspect to it. There's a lot of like family stuff again around that, but
Hmm.
like Halloween isn't, it doesn't really have that same kind of vibe, you know.
No, it's just it's kind of it's all about you and having a good time with your friends. Like, I fucking defy somebody to tell me a bad thing about Halloween.
That actually does sort of bring me around to one of the sort of like neurodivergent points,
Oh,
that
hit me. I
that
can't
I thought
wait.
was interesting, is just the notion of literal in addition to figurative masking. Um,
Okay.
every other neurodivergent person that I know who has a similar love for Halloween, this has never come up. I've never like discussed this with them, so I don't know if this is like a big thing or just like a thing that my brain goes like, oh, there's a connection there, whatever. But just like the notion that you can put on a physical mask and like take off the figurative one. You put on your costume and you're different, but in a way that is acceptable. As opposed to for the rest of us, we're different in a way that is like societally not okay and that we get mocked for and we get, you know, abused and beaten up and whatever else for. Now you get to be something other than yourself, and it's expected and it's applauded.
I was actually going to ask you about that because I think that is part of the appeal for Halloween for lots of people.
Oh,
And
sure.
actually, like, even acting, like, a lot of actors like wearing prosthetics for that reason. Like you said, you kind of can just like lean into, like, I'm expected to be this other thing now.
Hmm.
And that's cool. Growing up, I did have friends that were maybe neurodivergent and like I didn't know. And I wish I had a time machine and I could like see what their costumes were and like think about like were they having a better time and like I don't know. I just wish I had recognized that and like could have maybe I don't know. They could have had a better time.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. And like I said, that's the thing that like the just the notion of like costuming in general and like dressing up and, you know, depending on how, you know, depending on the character that you're costumed as and like how you
Hmm.
want to get into them and everything, there might be like, you know, different mannerisms or something. It might be that you could get into a costume such that you can like fully express your stims and whatever your various like neurodivergent sort of outward neurodivergent traits are in a way that like makes perfect sense for whatever you look like, whatever costume you're in or whatever.
Hmm.
And then you actually kind of get to be yourself for a minute. Um, you know, and again, it sucks that you would have to like disguise yourself and not be yourself in order to be yourself. But like, you know, maybe you just get to act the way that you would by yourself or whatever. So, you know, like the physical mask kind of takes over for the figurative, the internal mask. Which I think may be a factor, maybe consciously or not, for a lot of people. Do you remember any of your like favorite costumes?
The first costume I remember was one of I think many people of a certain age remember those like badge costumes that were like a vinyl sort of apron with a pattern on it of like a popular 80s like cartoon or something and then the plastic mask with the elastic band around the back that like if it got bent wrong in any way shape or form it was going to cut your ass up but you loved it.
The ones that had the little slit for the mouth where your tongue
Mm,
was all tore up.
yeah. I had a Care Bear one of those
Oh, tight.
and I intensely loved it. And then a few years later, after watching the classic film The Monster Squad,
Hell
I
yes.
was Dracula for 4 or 5 years in a row.
And like that specific Dracula, or just like Dracula's.
That motherfucking
All right,
Dracula.
nice, nice.
And I got in trouble, I think, the first 2 years in a row because I spent too long doing my makeup in the bathroom and making my class late for the Halloween parade.
Outstanding. Also, yeah, like that makes sense. Portentous, I guess, for someone who would then go on to do makeup professionally. Um, okay, that's fun. That's fun.
What about you?
Oh God. Um, so I have mentioned a number of times on this very podcast that I don't remember very much of my childhood. That I have like a small number of individual memories. A lot of them are Halloween. A lot of them are like Halloween related.
Because Halloween's the tits.
Yeah, truly. I don't know about favorite necessarily. I remember some of them. I have a picture somewhere, and I'll see if I can dig it up, of me in a bee costume, and
Shut the
I'm
fuck
like,
door.
I'm like tiny. I'm like, I can't be any older than 6. Um,
So not like B girl, ironically. Like you're too
no, no,
young.
no, no. Yeah, this was well before the Blind Melon video.
Okay.
No, just
Because goddamn, that would have been good.
in like a little bumblebee costume. Yeah, it's a million-year-old picture, and I haven't seen it in a long time, so she'll have to forgive me. It's possible that that picture predates my sister being born, so I might be like that little. Um, I don't remember if she's like in the picture with me or not. I think it's just me, which makes me think that I might have been like it might have even been before she was born. But yeah, a little bumblebee costume.
Gonna fucking die if you don't find that picture.
I'll look. Remind me afterwards, and I'll dig them out.
We'll post it if we find it. You
Oh,
guys.
I don't know about that.
I'll post it.
I have a picture from years later. My sister and I are both in it, and we're pretty young, like maybe 10 and 7 or so, where I'm like some sort of generic doctor, I guess. It wasn't really that interesting a costume for me, but she was a teabag. So my mom had gotten this clear plastic trash bag and like poked holes in it in the bottom for her legs. So she'd put her legs through, and then it was like tied up around her throat, and they had filled it with leaves, brown like dry leaves from just out in the yard or whatever.
That's so cute.
And then my mom made a little like Lipton tea like tag or whatever that just like hung over her shoulder. Yeah, it was pretty cute. I'll see if I can dig that one out.
Dude, homemade costumes are so much fucking better.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that I ever really had like a costume that came in like a kit or like a bag. My mom was actually a really creative person. I know so little about her, honestly, which sucks. But she was really interested in like fashion design and clothing design and everything. And we used to have some of her. My sister might still have them. I hope she does. Some of her like sketchbooks, of her like clothing designs and everything. And I don't know, it all looked pretty good to me, but I don't really have an eye for fashion. Anyway, mom was a pretty creative person, and I think she really liked to like build those costumes, to like make us costumes as much as we could.
Yeah. I think again, like Halloween is just one of those days where like if you have any kind of stripe in you like that and you don't get to do that for your day job because like you have a family to support and bills to pay, like it's like, oh, like this one day I get to like fucking bring out the big guns and
Yeah.
make my kid a tea bag. Like that's so cool.
I still have that inclination, like, a dozen times a year or so, I'll be like, it'd be a good Halloween costume. And I never actually do any of them. But I sometimes wonder how much of that reflex is just like my mom, like being so used to that notion that like she would just make us costumes.
I love that so much.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. No, and then at a certain point, I got old enough to, have more like creative control, I guess, over costumes. And the one that I remember the most, it must have been around like 91 or 92 because it was after the film came out. But do you remember the Liam Neeson film Darkman?
Vaguely.
All right. So the basic premise is you've got this guy who is some kind of a chemist or some kind of a scientist or something like that. And I forget, he either like falls afoul of crime lords or maybe he like works for the crime lords under duress or something like that. And anyway, his lab blows up. And he is like horribly disfigured or whatever, and then he goes on this like rampage of revenge, just like all wrapped up in
as one does.
Yeah, he's sort of like a mummy, honestly. He's just like heavily bandaged, and he's got this like trench coat and whatever. And for some reason, something about this just like
you were like iconic.
I was like that shit, yeah. And so I was Darkman one year. I may have a picture of that, and I think unless you knew that that's what it was, it probably didn't like register. But my mom helped me make most of that. I was Eric Draven from The Crow for 2 years running, and
of course you were.
That was that was past the point where I was trick or treating, but I would still like I lived in the suburbs, so I would still like throw a costume on and just wander around. Um,
I so I was thinking about this, and I I trick or treated in some stripe, whether that was like going with my brother or graduating to taking our cousins. It went full circle to I just went trick or treating in high school one year because my best friend and I were like, we kind of had a weird like Tina Belchery kind of moment where we were like, we probably can't do this anymore soon. So like we just fucking dressed up and went. Most people were actually really nice to us because they were like, well, at least you're not just dressed up like sluts and at a party. So
at least
here's
you're
some
not out.
candy.
At least you're not out being delinquents.
But yeah, so like it was fun, but like I've trick or treated way longer than like probably most kids do, but like I am pressed to think of a Halloween where I didn't like dress up in some way, shape, or form. I think last year was probably like the least, and that's because we were traveling. And
Right.
even still, I had like a theme outfit. It just wasn't like a full blown costume.
Right. So this is a little bit of a tangent, but being big Halloweenies, we tend to dress in a sort of like Halloween appropriate fashion. I don't think it was last year. I think it was the year before, but we went somewhere. Oh, it was Dick's. It was Dick's Sporting Goods, and we were getting like hand weights or something, and we were not in a costume. We were just dressed in a sort of like seasonally celebratory kind of a way, you know. So like the kid at the, and I say kid, I mean he was like 17, I bet. He was like super young. The kid who was at the register could not get his head around the notion that we were not in costume for something.
Well, he started guessing. He was like, "Are you supposed to be a cheerleader? What are you supposed to be?" I'm like very confused at first, and then I was like looking at what I was wearing, and I was like, "Okay, I'm wearing a pleated skirt and orange shoes." He thinks we're dressed for a Halloween party.
Yeah,
That's what's happening.
just like, no, we're just out in the world. Like this is just how we do. So last year in 2023, we took our first big trip abroad. We went to Scotland for 2 weeks, and we were there over Halloween, and we were just walking around Edinburgh on Halloween itself, and again, not in like a costume really, but in like a seasonably celebratory kind of thing. I have a kilt that's like gray and black and shades of orange, and I don't remember
I
exactly.
think I was wearing my witch hat.
Yeah, so we had like things that are clearly seasonally, delineated, whatever. Although again, we probably wear most of this shit anyway, just because it's Tuesday or whatever, and people were pretty receptive, I think.
Well, there was we left a bar at one point, and a person like chased us down.
Oh, right.
Where was he? I think he was Indian. I don't know. They were tourists from somewhere else, and he was like, "Excuse me, can you tell us where like the Halloween parade is? You guys look like, And we're like, "Dude, we're just ugly Americans on vacation too. Sorry, like no."
Yeah, no idea. I wish desperately that I did. And one of my other like sort of aspirational things is that I have wanted to emigrate to Scotland pretty much my entire life. So I would very much love to be that person who is like, yeah, I know I sound like this, but like I actually know shit. But no, it was very much like, I didn't know there was a parade. Like that's cool. So yeah. But yeah, as we have said, big Halloweenies, big seasonal appreciators. This will actually be our first year in our new house where we're actually going to be here for Halloween. For the listeners who are unaware, I did not grow up in the Denver area where we live now. I grew up in the Northeast, the North Shore, just north of Boston. And so I spent a great deal of time in and around Salem around Halloween, which I don't know that I would be as much of a Halloweenie if I hadn't had that experience. If you're not familiar with the kind of New England experience of Halloween and just the fall in general, it's a whole thing. We really do get into it. But yeah, so the year before, I took Jen back there to kind of see where I'd grown up and everything, and see what what Halloween is like where I'm from. So yeah, this will be our first year in our house, where we're actually going to be like physically present, actually here on Halloween. And I know Jen was very excited at the notion of trick or treaters, and then disappointed because our neighbor was like, "Yeah, there aren't any."
Fucking so sad.
There's not a lot of kids in our like immediate area, like the street that we live on. There's a couple of like little kids who live kind of across the street, further down. We live on not like a major street really, but like it's a pretty busy street, and I don't know that it's as like sort of suburban and walkable as some of the other streets around us. So I imagine that if there's a lot of trick or treating, it probably doesn't come out to the street that we live on.
I'm gonna go get a fucking bell and a sign that says full size candy bars.
Yeah,
I'm gonna make fetch happen. I don't know. I know I'm gonna sound like an old fucking hag, but the idea of people, like, I know safety is a thing and whatever, but like taking your kid around the mall and trick or treating out of people's trunks before dark.
I know.
What a world.
I am not even that invested in the notion of trick or treating, kind of from either angle. Obviously, when I was a kid, I was like, free candy, great. But at this point, if we had nobody come, I wouldn't be like heartbroken. But with that said, it's got to be after dark. You got to go to people's houses and see their decorations and shit. Again, like you said, I understand like safety and whatever else. First of all of the stuff, all of the like urban legends about how people get like killed on Halloween are false. None of that stuff ever happened. No one has ever found razor blades in candy. No one has ever impregnated him with cyanide. It happened one time, and it was one guy who like did it to his own kids. There's always those like police things where they're like, we'll x-ray your candy. And it sucks. It sucks to see something that is genuinely a joyful and a completely innocuous community thing get moved out of the community into like an empty parking lot somewhere, or like like you said, in the mall or whatever. Like, if you're a parent and I'm offending your delicate sensibilities, I apologize. I just think that kind of like hyper sanitized thing takes a lot of the spirit out of it. So right. But yeah, number of digressions aside, one of the other things that I thought was kind of interesting, specifically from a neurodivergent perspective, is like the way you can really like embody and express a special interest in a costume. So for those of you who have listened to the special interest ones, the special interest episode, the actual one that actually was released, an example that I used a couple of times was that kid that whenever you're on the playground, he's always got to be a Ninja Turtle. You know what he's doing at Halloween, and he probably is putting a ton of work into that costume. He probably looks like an actual turtle. And I bet that he is fucking psyched. He gets to like be his favorite character, That's not specifically a neurodivergent thing. I mean, obviously for everyone, that's pretty exciting. I think for some of us, it might be like, again, for the autistics among us, the special interesty folks, we might be maybe a little bit more enthusiastic or like a little bit more like intense about whatever costume I'm in, whatever character I am. You get to kind of put on the mantle, as it were, of your favorite character, or a character that you like, or even a character that you hate that you think would be fun to like traipse around as. I don't think that anyone who's wearing like Leatherface costumes is like, yeah, I really identify with this psychopath murdering people with a chainsaw.
I mean, I fucking hope not, but
yeah. But yeah, that kind of like identification with your character and everything, and being in that place where you get to not only like express your special interest in a really visible and a really present way, but like, yeah, you get to be Michelangelo for a couple of hours.
You're encouraged to be.
Indeed.
In fact.
Indeed.
Which is the fun part.
Yeah. So I think there's probably like a hook to special interests in that. Speaking of my own costumes, and when I think about it, I find that there is kind of a through line of like dressing as characters who have had some sort of transformatory thing happen, and they've come out the other side like powerful, So Darkman is just a guy, and then he has this horrible trauma occur to him, and on the other side of it, he's like able to right these wrongs and and all of that. And the same thing, Eric Draven, right? Guy dies. He's just a dude. He dies and he comes back, and now he's got powers and he can like.
Isn't that like every comic book superhero?
I mean, mostly, yeah. There's a doesn't matter. But yeah, when you look at
where was that going?
One of my special interesty kinds of things is anything that has like a real deep lore, and the Marvel universe in particular has a ton of lore because there's been so much, I hate the word content, but there's been so many stories produced over the years that there are like different characterizations of like what most people think of like anybody with a superpower as a mutant, and that's not always the case. Like a mutant is a specific kind of superpowered person, and then you've got mutates and you've got changelings and whatever else. And anyway, the point is that some mutants hit basically puberty and then their powers manifest, and that's like what a mutant is in the context of that universe. Others are what are called changelings, where they have their powers the whole time they're born with them. So Nightcrawler, for example, was born blue and with Ninja Turtle hands, and I think he could teleport like immediately. So that's a different class of being than a mutant, who is someone who had like latent powers and they just activated as a result of trauma or some precipitating event. Puberty is often a thing. So that's where that's what that thought was.
All right, I did this to me. Go on.
Yeah, you asked. Yeah, so there's a through line with a lot of my kind of character things, that you're like just a person, and then like some big thing happens to you outside of your control. In those two specific examples, it's violence at the hands of terrible people, and then on the other side of that, you get to take vengeance. Basically, you get to right those wrongs. And again, this is not like a neurodivergent thing specifically. This is going to be true of a lot of people. Just a way that kind of narrative probably appeals to me as a person who feels frequently powerless in the face of like giant evil all over the world all the time now. The notion that like, I would somehow acquire the ability to do something about those evils is alluring. I've talked about this before. I love to see people be like enthusiastic about stuff that they love, and costumes I think are really a way to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be like an intensely detailed cosplay, like convention worthy kind of thing. Just something that someone put a great deal of care and love and effort into, I think is just really cool. It's really great to see that. And we kind of live in a society where like you're like beaten into conforming to what other people expect and want and whatever else. And this is like a time when, like you said, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do, and you kind of get to be, if not yourself, then like something a lot closer to yourself than you have to be a lot of the time.
One of the things I was curious to ask you about, whenever I was talking to people, it only came up ever so briefly, and it was a little bit around like planning. Oh, Tyler had mentioned like, I don't want to answer the door and be too scary for like the age group of kids that are trick or treating in the neighborhood. And I was like, even down to like how the costume is going to affect, like he's thinking like the kids are about this age, like the planning is coming down to like that level of detail. And I'm just like, do you or have you historically like the planning all the time? And like this is something that I plan for it, but like I don't know that like that kind of fucking beautiful mind equation goes into like my plans. I'm just always kind of like, oh, maybe this black lipstick would be cool. Like that's about as detailed as I get.
Sure. I can see that. There's a whiff of the
a whiff
of the tism around that, around the notion of like planning everything out to like the smallest detail and trying to think of every possible eventuality and everything. I have not, that I can remember, ever really like planned like a Halloween costume or anything like that, a Halloween display or anything to that degree. I suspect in my particular case, it's because of the often very distinct kind of profiles between someone who is purely autistic and someone who has ADHD.
Okay.
So, for me, one of my like never-ending problems is that the autism side of the house wants to do that, wants to do everything in like incredible detail, and then the ADHD side of the house is like, I'm bored, and so we get halfway through anything, and the screaming in my head becomes too much, and I have to give it up. But yeah, I mean, I can see that, and that makes a lot of sense. I imagine that there are probably deeply autistic planners at things like haunts or displays, even, who are doing that kind of thing, who are doing it like to that degree of trying to figure out, okay, well, we get mostly kids who are 6 to 8, and what's, it's scary enough for them, but the 12-year-olds aren't going to like roll their eyes. I mean, 12-year-olds are going to roll their eyes no matter what. I remember being a 12-year-old, and that's basically all I did. I kind of always want to, and there's a part of me that's like, if we won the lottery tomorrow, for like untold money, like 9 figures or whatever, and we could do, and I could just like I didn't have a job anymore, and I didn't have any responsibilities at that point, and I could just like plan an absurd Halloween thing, for the house. How much fun that sounds.
Oh, 100%.
Like what a cool idea that sounds like. And not even necessarily just like the execution and having the thing done, but the actual planning process and the research that goes into, what's the best skeleton to use for this thing, and how many.
I say this with love, but like, here's how I see that happening. I feel like you would be real excited to start planning it, and then like there would be a couple days go by, and then I would be like, hey Graham, where you at with that? What's going on, babe? And then I would just start taking your notes and ordering things and putting it in front of you.
Yeah, pretty much. That, again, it's the same thing I was just talking about, like ADHD, right? Is that I get really excited about the notion of setting up these really complex things and like, making these like really detailed plans and whatever. And then I start to do it, and like the decision fatigue often hits me, and I have to put the thing down and walk away. So I'll put, 4 hours of like intense whatever into it, and then it gets to be too much, and I have to put it down and walk away, and then I forget it exists.
Mm-hmm.
Or every time I think about it, all I can think about is like the meltdown that it triggered because I hit it too hard. I can't moderate in that way. I can't be like, I'm going to do 2 hours max, and then I'm going to put it down. It's like I have to do it until I'm like burnt.
I feel like maybe this is too broad an observation, but like a lot of the conversations we've had recently, and like when I think about projects and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I think you enjoy having the idea and the outcome, but you don't enjoy the process.
I would not necessarily say that I don't enjoy the process. I would say that the process is hard in a way that just makes it really difficult for me to lean into a thing.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you're not entirely wrong. I very much do enjoy the planning more than the execution of a lot of things, and I think that would absolutely be the case for this. And I think you're right. It would absolutely be a thing where I would have a ton of really grandiose ideas, and then I would get started and I would burn out immediately. And 3 days later, you'd have to be like, are we gonna do the thing? Or because we've,
I mean, that's
done this
okay.
before.
That's why we're together.
Right.
I'm a doer, Graham.
One of us can do things and the other one can't.
I don't think that's fair, but I haven't gotten any traction on this question, but I brought it up to you. We've been talking about trick-or-treating. The blue buckets. Did you look into this?
Shit, no, I didn't.
Wow. It was literally the one thing about autism and Halloween that I was like, am I fucking up?
Yeah.
Okay. From Newsweek.com. A blue Halloween bucket has become an unofficial symbol of awareness for autism. If you see a trick-or-treater holding a blue pumpkin candy bucket at your doorstep, it could mean the person is autistic. The phenomenon took off after Alicia Plumer shared an image of a blue Halloween bucket on social media. announcing her autistic son would be carrying the item while trick-or-treating. If you see someone who appears to be an adult dressed up to trick-or-treat this year carrying this blue bucket, he's our son. His name is BJ and he is autistic. While he has the body of a 21-year-old, he loves Halloween, she posted. So this woman was just trying, it sounds like to do something nice for her son who sounds like might be high support needs but loves Halloween, wanted to go trick-or-treating. She means well, I think everyone would probably agree. And so now blue buckets are a thing that you can send your, she specifically called it out as autistic, and I think like most people are familiar with it that way. So in case your kid's maybe nonverbal or older, as her son was in this case, like you don't answer the door and be a dick to them, I think is the gist of it. So blue buckets, the backlash in response.
Yeah, I can see kind of both sides of that. I think that it's probably good to indicate that someone has like a non-visible disability and that they may not necessarily behave in exactly the same way as you would expect or whatever. As you said, that this kid is probably nonverbal. I can understand wanting to kind of create that accommodation. On the one hand, I can see being like, let's not force kids to out themselves if they don't necessarily want people to know that they're autistic.
Because doesn't that go back to what you were saying? Like, it's probably the one day a year when, like, everybody gets to dress up. Everybody's supposed to be a little bit, quote unquote, weird or not themselves. Like,
Yeah, everybody gets to belong.
yeah, and potentially, like, it might be the one day that they feel like they fit in the best. And now they've got to go take this fucking bucket that is different from everybody else's, and maybe they don't want to.
Right. And I think there is still kind of a societal perception that autistic people are like childlike in some ways, or that we're like, I hate to say the word simple, but you know what I mean? Like, that people think that we're not like functional adults or whatever, that we don't have like a fully, um, just because you're not able to speak, just because you're nonverbal, doesn't mean that everything else isn't like running at 100%. You know what I mean? Like I can imagine being in a situation where you're like forced to out yourself as being a disabled person and then getting treated in the way that a lot of people do treat disabled people, like infantilizing us and, and all of that. And just not wanting to do that, not wanting to deal with that. And yeah, like feeling like for once you get to be part of society, part of like what everyone around you is doing. And it doesn't matter that you're weird or that you stand out or whatever, because like everyone does right now, and then you have to pull yourself out of that again.
Yeah.
So I can see that being kind of a thing. I also kind of feel like it is a solution, not a solution in search of a problem, but it is a solution designed to solve a problem that shouldn't exist in the first place. Like if some kid comes up to your door on Halloween, you give them fucking candy. That's it. That's the whole transaction. Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't.
Don't
be a dick. Don't be, don't like treat them differently. Whatever. Like this kid shouldn't have to disclose his disability just because there is an expectation that a person might have.
Yeah, I think like honestly, don't be a dick would go a long way to solve this problem. But I feel like this is more trying to like make neurotypical parents feel more comfortable, I think, than it is about making their kids feel more comfortable. It feels motivated by fear, I think. And I understand wanting to protect your kids. But like I always think about, I fucking hate when people make their kids hug and kiss people. Like it's so triggering to me. And this is like another stripe of that. Like you have to go say this specific thing, and if you don't do it, you're not respecting adults. And it's like they're gonna be fine, okay? Like, it's not a big deal. It's trick or treating. You just stick your bag out there. Maybe the people are like, "Oh, what are you supposed to be?" If it gets weird, your job as the parent is to be like, "Oh, happy Halloween," like maybe you say, "Sorry, they're nonverbal if there's confusion or whatever." Like, if you want to like address it, that's your problem. That's how I feel.
Yeah, there are a lot of accommodations, and I want you to hear air quotes around that word. There are a lot
Mhm.
of quote unquote accommodations that are things that are dreamed up by neurotypical people or by abled people. This is applicable to every stripe of disability that are not actual accommodations. They're things that make the abled people feel better about the presence of disabled people. And
Mhm.
um, given that this skews into that territory a lot, like again, you can be like, you know what, this mom is just trying to do the best by her kid and whatever. You also you could have sent him out with a normal bucket and not worried about it. And I genuinely hope that no one would be a dick if someone who was nonverbal or like wasn't like communicative, whatever, showed up. Like again, your job as the person handing out candy is to hand out the candy. You know what I mean? Like,
This case is a little bit extreme because like as a 5 foot woman answering the door, if a nonverbal 21-year-old dude showed up on my doorstep, it doesn't really matter to me what day it is, if I'm being honest. Like, I am going to need some kind of explanation. It literally anything would be great. And so, like, this is a very special case. Just the fact that, like, now, if a guy shows up with a blue bucket, and now my idiotic ass is going to be like, okay, well, here's some candy. And like, maybe now I get stabbed because he's a fucking predator. Like, it would have just been easier if his mom had showed up with him and said, oh, sorry, this is my son. It's his favorite holiday. Okay, great. Like, why is she just sending him out? There's a lot going on here.
there is, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm, I guess, essentially neutral about the thing. I might be slightly more predisposed to be harsh about it because it does run on that same engine of like a lot of disability accommodations are just things that make abled people feel better. Um, all of that shit around like calling us differently abled or handy capable and all that bullshit that does
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely nothing for disabled people. It's just to make abled people feel better because they feel like disabled is a slur, basically. Um, and when some of you use it that way, that's why. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't have kids. I'm never going to be in a position to have to make this kind of decision. But yeah, it skews a little bit in the direction of like I don't like it. I don't like it very much. You know, I dislike it more than I like it. The more that I think about it, the more I'm like, you know what, I'm not. I don't think I'm really on board with this. And so one of the things about this that I think is maybe a little bit confusing, and this is why I feel like my response to that question, because you've asked me before off, tape, whatever, outside the context of the podcast. And I was like a little bit vague about the way like it was implemented or whatever. So I was not thinking of the blue buckets that are carried by the trick-or-treaters. I was thinking of the teal buckets, which are the ones that you deploy at your house. And those are the ones that indicate that they are like allergen free. So there's no nuts or maybe no gluten or whatever. I think that we maybe could have picked a different color. But yeah, so the teal pumpkins, I actually do think that's probably a really important thing. Because there are a lot of people who have allergies, a lot of people who have whatever food issues, and being able to, that's got to be just as alienating, if not more. Being a kid who has like a peanut allergy and you have to be like super careful on Halloween, like you must feel kind of excluded. So I actually think it's probably like a really nice thing to do is to be like, here's candy that we know doesn't have peanuts in it.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess we'll do that.
Um, I mean, if we can fucking find anything, I feel like everything anymore is like, this is processed in a facility that includes tree nuts.
I mean, okay.
So reaching all the way back to the beginning of the episode, you asked me about my like origin story vis-a-vis Halloween and said that you expected something a lot more metal. What? What did you expect that I was gonna say?
I feel like everybody's love of Halloween starts in childhood
Sure.
because it's fun. And then you're like, Samhain and the transition of life to death. And I'm like, okay, so I'm to believe like little toddler Graham is out here in the woods pondering the essence of life. Like,
Yes. But like, you know, through the
it's
lens
not
of
fun. I'm not gonna lie.
through the lens of ghosts and skeletons and shit.
Yeah, but like not in a fucking summoning demons, listening to death metal way.
I mean, that is my late teens.
I'm just saying, it's hard to picture like a tiny Graham enjoying all of these things, and it's like really fun. It just sounds like, I don't know. What was your Spotify wrap up? Dramatic and sad.
Dramatic and sad.
Yeah. That's not how I would describe Halloween.
Yeah, and I think for me too, I do not like to be frightened. I have a very exaggerated startle response. I do not enjoy being startled or surprised. So many like activities around Halloween are kind of centered around that, around like, you know, haunted houses and scary movies and like that kind of stuff, you know, and none of that really appeals to me because I have such a viscerally bad reaction to it. I remember being very young, like real little, 3, 4, and my parents took us to a haunted house somewhere, and I got like one room in before I was just completely overwhelmed, tears streaming down my face, screaming that I wanted to go home. And my dad had to pick me up and put me on his shoulders and like walk backwards, like walk like back through the haunted house, back out the entrance. And that's my reaction to like, I've never been to a corn maze, and I was just talking about this recently that like I would like to go to one just to see it, you know. And Jen was like, "Okay, but we're absolutely."
Blows my mind that you've never been to a corn maze.
We don't have a lot of farms where I grew up, and the ones that we do have tend to be more like livestocky farms, I think, than like I don't know, vegetable, grain, whatever. I don't know how farms work.
Corn.
Right.
Is where
Yeah,
you find
I don't
corn.
I don't know that we grow a lot of corn in the Northeast.
That's fair. That's fair.
So yeah, it had never really been, and I mean, I'm sure there are some, and I just didn't know about them. But yeah, I have never been to one of those, and so I suggested like we should. There's one at a nature reserve near here, and I was like, oh, we should go check that out. And Jen goes, okay, well, yes, but actually, what she said was fine, but we're not going to go to like the scary one. And I was like, no, absolutely not. Like the moment someone jumps out at me with intent to scare, I'm going to kick him in the dick. So,
yeah, I also ironically don't like haunts very much. Actors coming out of nowhere, I feel like, are in danger from both of us, and I've hurt myself like running into things like at haunts. It's just at some point something changed for me with haunts, and yeah, I don't like them anymore. Like I just feel anxiety. It's not like fun anxiety because it's supposed to be like, you know, nothing bad is really going to happen to you. But like for whatever reason, my brain just is just in survival mode, and there's not like that safety trigger. So yeah, that part's not fun.
Yeah, it's largely the same for me. I mean, I'm a deeply anxious person all the time anyway. And so to go into an environment where I know I'm going to be like suffused with dread and it's going to be punctuated with like short, sharp shocks, that's not for me. That is not a place where I will thrive. Yeah. People have asked me before, or I've had discussions about like things that I wouldn't necessarily say are bad about Halloween, but like things that aren't my favorite parts of Halloween. And that's one of them is like haunted houses and stuff.
That being said, I like it when you can find the ones like when we went to Haunted Overload when they had like was it branded as sensory friendly or was it just like a not like?
I think they call it like Fright Light, but yeah, it's essentially
Like it's the whole haunt, the lights and everything, but like there's not actors like jumping out of shit at you and like chasing you with chainsaws and stuff. Like you can just like go through and look at everything, and it's still like spooky and scary and fun. But yeah, you're not waiting for someone to like breathe on you and make you run and trip over stuff and bruise your knees again. And
Yeah, that occurred to me like when we were going back. I thought, okay, well, we should definitely, because Haunted Overlord started long after I moved away from the Northeast.
it's so cool. If you guys live out there, go.
Yeah, it's in Lee, New Hampshire. It is absolutely fantastic. I think they do 3 like sensory friendly nights this year because presumably it was such a success. When we went, it was the only one, and it was packed to the gills. But yeah, as Jen said, it's the entire experience minus the scares. So there's no one. The only people walking through like the haunt are you and the other customers. There's not like, I mean, there's like employees, for safety reasons and whatever, but no one's jumping out at you. No one's like part of the landscape at all. So you just get to see the ambiance of the thing. And that I loved. And I think more, there's one around the corner, like literally around the corner from us, that is apparently pretty well reviewed. They've been running it for like,
It's like a staple at this point.
yeah, for years and years and years. And I would not even consider going to it unless they did like that, the kind of sensory thing. I'm sure there are plenty of other people who would like to do that. And, that's something that can be more kid friendly, I guess. Again, you look back at like little me and 2 or 3 people jumping out and shouting, and that was all I could take. But like, if I could have,
I would love to know more about this because I don't know who in their right mind would take a 4-year-old child to a haunt.
I mean, it was the 80s. Things were a little different.
I guess, yeah, that's said. Yeah.
It was the 80s, and also my parents were first-time parents with me, so it's not like they had, and neither of them had especially great parental role models.
I'm gonna go ahead and say if like I had been a boy, my dad would have did the same
Probably.
shit.
I think when they told me where we were going and like what it was going to be, I was really excited.
Well,
because
sure, because you have no concept.
right, and I think I wasn't expecting, like I said, like the scares, and had it been just like, a sensory friendly kind of thing, had there not been like actors jumping out to scare, I think I would have loved it. I think it would have been great. When I say that a lot of other people come at Halloween from a different direction than I do, that's kind of what I mean. Is that like when there are a lot of people who love Halloween for like the fear aspect and like the scares and the gore. And you'll see like Halloween displays that are just dismembered limbs and fucking like corpses, strewn about and everything. And like that doesn't, I mean, I respect the artistry and the time that went into it and whatever, but like that doesn't do it for me. Give me something that's spooky and eerie way before like gory and shit. And so, when people are like, oh, I love Halloween, I love slasher films or whatever, I'm like, those are not related concepts to me, other than the one specific film that is actually called Halloween. But fun fact for the listeners, I have never seen Halloween.
It grinds my fucking gears.
The only film in the Halloween series that I have seen is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which has nothing whatsoever to do with Haddonfield, New Jersey, or with Michael Myers, or what's her name? Laurie Strode?
God damn it.
But
nobody's perfect.
Yeah, so I don't want to turn it into like a parade of here's all the stuff that I hate about Halloween.
I mean, honestly, you're talking about 15-year-old boys. Like,
largely,
that's the stuff like you like in high school that you like about Halloween, because that's the first time you see boobs, and then you take a girl on a date to scare them so that you can touch them, and like
Ew.
Those are all like very just teenage boy shits.
Sure, teenage boys of all ages. Yeah,
and
so
that my inner teenage boy fucking loves Halloween.
So that kind of stuff doesn't really super appeal to me. Obviously, like parties are not my jam, just anyway.
What?
So if someone is coming at Halloween from that, like, I love slasher movies and we're gonna have a big party, and and also I'm like, that's the furthest part of like the Halloween spectrum from like the part that I am occupying, where it's like me sitting alone with a stump and a skull with a candle on it and just like hoping something comes out of the woods at me. Yeah, very, very different things there. 'Cause I feel like you've probably been to a lot more Halloween parties than I have. Do you have like a favorite one? Was there like one that sticks out that was like really exceptional?
Ooh.
Because sometimes, like while you're thinking about it, sometimes I feel like I like the notion of a party. I like the idea of being like in a place with people that like I know, and it's just like a bunch of friends hanging around having like fun, but we're all wearing like stupid masks, where we're whatever. We're putting Hocus Pocus on in the background. Like that seems really appealing to me. And I think in practice it would be probably not so great. But like, yeah, I think that I love the concept of a Halloween party. Like even having seen it in TV shows and movies and stuff and being like, oh, that looks like it'd be, it'd probably be pretty fun if you're the kind of person who can handle a party. I feel like
I
you've maybe
mean,
been to.
yeah, Halloween parties are like my favorite thing.
Oh, there you go.
Um, when I was a young man, my bestie and I actually had quite an era of spooky seasons many years ago, and our whole work, like, kind of everybody took turns hosting Halloween parties a little bit.
Oh wow.
That one of the fun things that really stood out one time was the cops were called when our friend Brianna was hosting, and her husband were dressed as Dog the Bounty Hunter and Beth, and the cops that responded to the call fucking loved it.
Oh boy.
So yeah, they hung out, they were cool. Kept partying, it was a good time. Jen hosted a party that was pretty good too. Some good costumes. I was a panda that year. Yeah, I fucking love Halloween parties, dude. And everybody does put on a funny costume. And I would take a funny costume over a well crafted costume
Sure.
any day. That's what I know from going to a lot of Halloween parties because it's just so good.
How do you feel about like topical costumes?
I think it depends. Like I can't think of a single one that I ever saw like in the wild and I was like like 20 years later. Like I've made the mistake of doing them myself too. Like I was Snooki one year. I can't rerun that.
Yeah.
If a 20-year-old saw a picture of it, they'd be like, "Why are you an Oompa Loompa with good hair?"
I think I've seen pictures of that.
I have a picture of me and the girls. Like that's our like classic Halloween picture.
Right. Halloween parties are one of the few sort of like social gathering-y things that like I just really wish I could handle. That's one of those things that like I kind of feel like I miss out on about Halloween because it does on paper seem like so much fun. It's just in the moment. I'd never make it.
Do you want to get dressed up and have a party?
I mean, like
your
kind
face
of,
right now says no. You fucking don't,
like,
dude.
kind of, but yeah, I can't decide if it would be easier or harder to have it here because part of me is like I can readily escape here in a way that I can't if we go to somebody else's house. Like if it gets to be too much, I can just be like, fuck it, I'm going upstairs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, there's a part of me that's like I worry that I would intend to leave the party for 10 minutes, but I would never be seen again.
Like on this earth or at the party?
At the party. No, like that I would be like, this is all too much. I need to take a second. I'm going to go upstairs for 15 minutes or whatever. And then 2 hours later, you'd come up and, I'd be watching TV or whatever. Like,
I feel like you have described every other time anyone's been to our house.
No, yeah. So, I mean, there's a precedent. Yeah, no, again, it's one of those things that feels to me like it would be fun. Part of the thing that I think is hard is I think that would only work in a situation where like I knew everyone who was there and not like casually away. You know what I mean? It would need to be people who were like probably my actual friends absent you, and I don't have any of those people. I have like 2 people here and I don't think I could get either of them to
this is gonna blow some of your minds if you've stuck with us this far and you don't know this fact. Graham and I met at a party.
Mhm. Yeah. So a thing that I do every once in a while, and a thing that has never fucking worked, but a thing that I keep trying is like party tolerance. Like I tell myself, it's been a while since I've been to one of these things. Like maybe I can go and have a good time, whatever. And it inevitably is exhausting, at best. But like, yeah, there's a part of me that's like, the only reason I'm so bad at social interaction is because I never do it. You know, like I think that I can like build up a tolerance to it, and like I'll become a person who can handle parties, and I know that I can't. But every once in a while, yeah, somebody be like, "Oh, we're having a party," and I'll be like, "Yeah, fuck it, I'll drop in." Um, that's the other one actually. Christmas parties is the one that makes me think like, man, that seems like it'd be fun.
Hmm.
Um,
All right. Well, we'll figure out what a Halloween party looks like for us. Maybe we just put on costumes and sit on the porch and eat candy and get drunk. Like that could be a thing.
yeah, that's the thing. All right, that's a public intoxication charge waiting to happen. Is what that is.
Does it count if you're on your front lawn?
I don't know. I've never been charged with public intoxication, so
All right, show off. What else you got? You feel? Are you done? Have you explored Halloween thoroughly?
that's most of it. I think one of the things that always that I always try to kind of keep in mind about it is the sort of like original meaning of Halloween, the notion that like there's another place after this place, and sometimes the barrier between this place and that place is real thin, and like people can come through or things can come through, you know. And so, in as much as I ever do any kind of like memorial for people that I've lost, it's always on Halloween. If there is another place, and if they do, you know, come back, or if they do come close to coming back, that's like the time when they're closest to us, I guess. You know, if I can do a little like kind of memorial thing, like candles. There's an old tradition where you put a candle in a western facing window so that your loved ones can find their way home. Um, you know, I'll do like little things like that. That again comes back to where I come from on the whole thing. It's just the notion of like being obsessed with death and being really really taken with the notion of like another world, and like a place where the dead are, that's separate from us, that's here but not quite here, and that there's a time we can like almost get there. That's such an interesting thing to me. But yeah, I have lost a fair amount of people over the course of my life, and I do try to do a little bit of like an observance on Halloween. That feels like the appropriate time. Yeah, that's all I really got. Do you have a particular Halloween memory that sticks out as a favorite?
Mm. The last two have been fucking bangers, dude. So
I agree.
it's hard to it's hard to like reach back and be like, well, anything was really better than that. But travel and Halloween, two of my favorite things with my favorite person, pretty good.
Could be worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ever since leaving the Northeast, I don't miss it very often, but this time of year it really it just calls to me, you know. And I'll be on Instagram and I follow like, you know, some photographer accounts and like just some people that are kind of back in that area and whatever, and just like seeing pictures of the place and like decorations and just the general kind of, I don't want to be like New England is special, but like every place has a particular energy, and there's this kind of spooky energy about New England, particularly in the fall, that I have never really experienced anywhere else. And most of the time that I have lived here in Colorado that I've traveled back has been in the fall. So it's become such a habit that at this point, the fact that we're not going back, I'm like, meh.
But you got the fucking 12-foot skeleton.
We do have a 12-foot skeleton. I'm not excited about being here in our house. It's just like, you know, it's such like a fall tradition thing, that like I go and I'm like walking on these wet cobblestones that I grew up around, and like the ocean is right there, and everyone gets there's a lot more Halloween spirits, I think, there than there is here in terms of just like decorations and events and stuff. And admittedly, I'm not like looking for events, whereas back there, you're fucking bombarded by them. Fun fact: the town of Salem actually has a special commission called Haunted Happenings, which is explicitly like the Halloween commission. So like those people, they spend all year planning for Salem's Halloween things and all like the events and everything that's going to be going on. There's a parade. There might be more than one parade, but like Salem's kind of like an oddball witchy place anyway, and so it really like shifts into high gear this time. And so yeah, there is this group of people who are like the organizers essentially for everything Halloween related in and around Salem.
Like, that doesn't surprise me to hear, and like, don't get mad, but I love Salem. It's so gorgeous. It's not like you can't tell that they make all their money in October.
Oh yeah,
Like I would love to go back in like May.
muggy.
Oh my god.
No, I think almost any time of year is great to visit Salem. To be honest, they've tried very hard to kind of get away from this like quote unquote witch city image.
Wait, like, don't, like, I love that, but like also it feels like a tourist trap in October.
Right. No, the point that I'm making is that like they don't want to just be known for that. Like obviously the genesis of all of that is going to be the witch trials, which were 400 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to be known for this one, frankly, murder spree, this like horrible thing that happened in the town. Like they don't want that to be all they're known for. And Salem it was like the maritime capital of the U.S. for hundreds of years. There's tons of maritime history there. There's tons of like other history and everything just in and around that area. And so they're not trying to be like, oh, we're not the witch city anymore, but they're trying to be like, we're not just the witch city, And so there's things that you can do kind of all year round. There's a tall ship, the Friendship of Salem, that docks there. There's all kinds of shit. And so yeah, anytime is pretty much a good time to visit. I tell people who have never been, you're gonna think that you want to visit around Halloween. It is, as Jen says, it's very tourist trappy. The town is very used to the notion that they make all of their money in October. So you're gonna think that you want to visit around Halloween. The actual day is not that different from any other time. So if you're gonna go and you really want to see it during spooky season, I always tell people like earlier in the month is better because it's before like the crowds descend. Also, Salem's not a big town. You're gonna think, oh, I'll just drive into Salem. No, you will not.
Yeah, you're gonna keep driving.
You will not. Parking in Salem is difficult outside of the season, like for people who live there, So I love that town, but yeah, the touristiness of the season is really like it kind of wears on you after a while. I
mean, that being said, I do like you were saying, like, what is cool and I think is also probably curated and manufactured a bit is like a sense of community participation in the thing. And like our neighbor like that just moved in, like we were both ecstatic that each other was decorating because we were like, what the hell, nobody else on the block is with the program, like what are we doing? And like if the whole block was decorated, it would be so much more fun. And that is just like, I mean, I'm sure in Salem, like you probably get like some kind of, I don't know, reverse HOA notice if you don't have shit out. But like here, it's just like, take it or leave it. It's Halloween, and that feels not as fun, I think.
Yeah, I have been lamenting recently, the last few days, and also probably every fall for the last few years, that this spooky season doesn't really feel very spooky. And part of that, I think, is because like, if I want to see Halloween decorations, I have to go outside of my house and like look at my, like it's
Yeah,
just, it's
like go
us
look
and the
at our
neighbors.
house.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it feels like we're kind of the only ones participating in it a little bit. The fact that it is literally 90 degrees outside right now, on October 7th or whatever today is,
Oh, it's not that hot. It's 77 right now.
which is still too goddamn many for October. But yeah, it was literally 93, I think, yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think at some point, you'd walk outside and you'd look around and you'd be like, huh, it's a little chilly. And it's like a little dim for 6:30 p.m. or whatever. I guess it's fall now. That hasn't happened. It's still 80 degrees at night, and the light is less, I guess.
Yeah, we walked to the bar in dark. It was sad last night.
A lot of the trees are still pretty green, which is weird. I thought it was about the light, but I don't know, maybe the temperature impacts when they drop their leaves. But yeah, I don't know. Fall is like kind of a rare commodity around here anymore. And so the combination of that plus, like I said, being one of the only houses on the block that's decorated, I don't know, people aren't as into it. We do this thing every October where we'll go out 2 or 3 nights and we just drive around and like look at people's decorations. And I feel like every year there are like a few less than there were the year before, which is disappointing. And I think that like Christmas is like all up in your face.
Yeah, she is.
So many people decorate for Christmas, even if they're not, religious, whatever. Christmas music is everywhere you go. There's like decorations everywhere, and everyone's like kind of really into it. It's not really like that with Halloween. It's such like a specific thing, and I wish that it were a little bit more like that, because I feel like, and this is probably like the rosiest of tinted glasses, but I feel like it was like that when we were younger. One of the things that will surprise listeners who have been listening to me rant about how much I love the thing for like a year or for this entire episode is I am not an everyday is Halloween person. I am not really a person who is excited that Halloween decorations are showing up in stores in July. Because for me, if something is all the time, it's not special. And I don't know if this is like an ADHD thing or whatever, but like, we will put our decorations up at the beginning of September as we did this year. And they fade into the background so much. They just become kind of like background noise. And by the time the actual day comes up, a lot of times I'm so saturated by it. Like it's just been everywhere all the time. My Instagram feed used to be like a ton of shit like that. And by the time the day shows up, I'm just like, I've been like drowning in it for 2 months. I don't want to be bored of Halloween before it actually hits. But yeah, the like extension of the season, I think dilutes it a lot. And I don't know.
Whereas I'm like, September is pre-October. Halloween is a season, not a day. I don't know how you tolerate me.
With a smile. Yeah, I feel like when I was a kid, it was like a lot more. It was a lot more prevalent. I feel like there was a lot more decoration. I'm old enough that like decorations back then used to be these like cardboard, like witch faces and like skulls and stuff. They were like monster heads basically that were cardboard, and you would literally like scotch tape them onto your windows. And Jen talked about like those plastic like blow formed masks that had like a slit for the mouth so that people could hear you talk, but if your tongue hit it, ooh, you weren't eating any lemon candy that night. And it felt like it was more sort of concentrated, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Like I feel like Halloween decorations for a lot of people went up 2 weeks before, or like maybe October 1st, and it was more people that were doing it. And now it's like almost nobody is doing it, but then you've got the people like us who have our shit up on September 1st. You've got the people like the house 4 blocks north of us that have, I don't know, 6 12-foot decorations and like
I want to hang out with them so fucking bad.
Countless fucking other like skeletons. Their yard is very small, and it is just like every square foot has a skeleton in it. It's great.
What do you call like reverse trick or treating? Can we like take them a 6-pack?
I mean, maybe, I don't know.
I feel like we should do something this year.
We
go lurk and look at their lawn every year.
Well, yeah. And what's funny is that there's a house across the street that like is clearly very much in the spirit of the thing, but their decorations are all that kind of weird, like sort of cutesy, like fall festival, like Martha Stewart-y kind of stuff. And so they've got a ton of this like,
They look like if you went trick or treating there and they gave you candy when you left the porch, they would be like, "God bless you," instead of Happy Halloween.
yeah, no, I feel like those are the people handing out apples.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. And I will take that over 1,000 houses with no decoration.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's kind of funny to see this like huge skeleton display, and then across the street you've got all these like really cute like corn dolls and shit. And then there's another house near us that has probably spent $20,000 in inflatables.
You know what we have to go check out? We gotta go see what's going on with the house with the actual fucking casket in the yard. Like somebody was just getting started setting their shit up, and one of the things they had was a motherfucking casket, y'all.
Yeah, it's a corner lot and it's a big one, and they have like a lot of kind of street facing real estate. So they have historically gone pretty all out. I'm very surprised that they're just getting started now. But yeah, they had the first one of those like animated like headless horseman statues like years ago.
Yeah, their shit goes crazy. I'm excited.
Yeah, so and that's what I mean is that there's a handful of places like that are like really doing the thing, and then everyone else on the block is like, nah.
Well,
so
this is what I'm saying. Let's go take all the people who are doing the damn thing some drinks, and we'll be the change we want to see in the world.
We'll start our own Halloween committee.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the comparison between that and between, like I said, Christmas, where there's decorations on every other house and the music on the radio anywhere you go is all Christmas song. Like that feels like Christmas. It's a lot, I think, harder to be like, it feels like Halloween when, like I said, it's still 90 degrees and there's no decorations anywhere. And,
I'm doing my 31 days of Halloween outfits.
True.
For your benefit. It's not just for your benefit. Mostly, I was trying to make myself get dressed every day is a little bit where it came from.
That's fair.
Yeah, but yeah, same kind of thing. Like I was kind of like feeling sad and was like, it's spooky season. Don't be sad. So
yeah, that the end result of my having that conversation with myself is I have to put in the effort. Like I bitch about how like, oh, I'm, it doesn't feel like spooky season, but like I haven't been anywhere. I haven't done.
Where's your spooky outfit?
I don't have any spooky outfits.
Don't lie directly to my face. That is so unlike you.
The closest thing that I have is like hoodies, which I can't wear.
You have shoes.
I've been wearing that one pair of shoes.
Do you literally not have any like? Yes, you do. Shut up. I know you do. I've seen your clothes.
I'm glad you had this conversation.
Me too. Vindication.
All right, well, this is probably 4 hours long at this point.
It's pretty long, I'm not going to lie.
I think I'm satisfied, if you're satisfied.
I guess so. Should we maybe say goodbye or something nice?
Yeah, let's roll it up.
How should we roll it up?
In mummy bandages, mummy wrappings. Yeah. That was a Snickers, which is a type of candy. Never mind. I'm going to stop. The face she's making right now. She's going to stab me and turn me into a Halloween decoration.
No, that would smell horrible.
All right. Well, as always, thank you all for tuning in. I wonder at what point the phrase
you
tuning
don't tune in to a podcast.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, at what point does that stop making any sense? That like
when you stop using radio. Let me back out.
Deep breath.
Let me back out.
Deep breath. Yeah, anyway. Okay, so this has been fun. And thank you for joining us on a slightly spooky journey. We should put like rattling chains and stuff in the background. We should get one of those CDs of like Halloween noises,
Oh, those were a fucking banger in middle school and elementary school. Just have it on in the background during the day.
Just like weird disembodied laughs and like,
Ooh.
Yeah. Chains clanking, like wolves howling and shit. That loon sound.
That's why it doesn't feel like Halloween, dude. We gotta go get a spooky sound CD.
We do. And then we have to find a CD player to play it in.
Speaking of antiquated technology.
Right. Uh-huh.
All right. Well, cool. I hope you guys have fun at parties that are maybe just you dressed up having drinks and candy on your porch.
I mean, a party of one is still a party.
Yup.
All right, thanks for checking us out, everybody. We will see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye, audience.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. You can find us on social media on Instagram at idkwhatthatmeans.podcast, or if you happen to be on Blue Sky, idkwhatthatmeans.bsky.social. Or you can contact us by email at idkwhatthatmeans.podcast@gmail.com.
We hope you have fun or learn something. Probably not both, but hopefully both.
Probably not both.
Anyways, thanks for listening to I Don't Know What That Means.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.